They say money changes people, but for Derek Sterling it just revealed the monster he always was. On a Tuesday night, he threw his wife Sarah and their 6-month-old son out onto the street, laughing as he locked the door to their mansion. He thought he had won. He thought he had successfully hidden the millions and replaced his family with a younger model. But he forgot one thing. The name on the original deed wasn't his. What happens when a man who thinks he's untouchable swipes his card and sees the 2 words that destroy his life: access denied? You won't believe the karma that hits in Part 5. The rain on East Hampton's Oakwood Drive didn't just fall, it felt like it was trying to scrub the pavement clean. Inside number 402, a sprawling colonial estate valued at just over $4 million, the atmosphere was colder than the storm outside. Derek Sterling stood by the fireplace, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit. He checked his reflection in the mirror above the mantel, smoothing back his silver-flecked hair. He looked every inch the successful venture capitalist he claimed to be. "Derek, please." Sarah's voice cracked. She was standing near the foyer, clutching 6-month-old Leo to her chest. Leo was fussing, sensing his mother's distress. "You can't just tell us to leave tonight. It's pouring. We have nowhere to go." Derek turned slowly, a look of bored irritation on his face. He picked up a thick envelope from the mahogany coffee table and tossed it toward her. It landed with a heavy slap on the floor. "I'm not telling you anything, Sarah," Derek said, his voice smooth and devoid of empathy. "The law is telling you. That is an eviction notice, effective immediately. Well, actually, it was effective 3 days ago, but I was generous enough to let you stay through the weekend." Sarah stared at the envelope. "Eviction? What are you talking about?" "We own this house. You told me the business was booming." "I own the house," Derek corrected, stepping closer. "Or I did. My company owns the assets. And since the company is pivoting, we're liquidating residential holdings. The new owners take possession tomorrow morning at 8:00 a.m. I'm moving to the city for business. Well, you need to figure it out. You're liquidating our home." Sarah's legs felt weak. She sank onto the ottoman. "But where is the money? If you sold it, we should have enough to get a hotel or rent a place." Derek laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "We." "There is no we anymore, Sarah. I filed for divorce this morning. My lawyers, typically excellent, found a loophole in that prenup you signed without reading. You get what you came in with, which, if I recall, was a heap of student debt and a used Honda." Sarah looked around the room. The photos of their wedding were already gone from the shelves. The expensive art she had helped choose was crated up in the corner. He had been planning this for weeks. "Derek, I have your son in my arms," she whispered, tears finally spilling over. "He needs a roof. He needs formula. You can't just throw us into a storm." Derek checked his Rolex. "Actually, I can. You're trespassing, and frankly, your crying is upsetting my evening plans." He walked to the front door and threw it open. The wind howled into the warm hallway, spraying rain onto the hardwood floors. "Get out," he said. "Derek, I said get out!" He roared, his face suddenly twisting into a mask of rage. "I'm done with the dragging anchor you are. I'm done with the sleepless nights and the crying baby and your constant nagging about family time. I'm a man of importance, Sarah. I have a life to live." Terrified by his sudden aggression, Sarah grabbed the diaper bag she had packed earlier, thinking they were just going to his mother's, and ran into the rain. She barely made it to her old Honda Civic parked in the driveway, before the front door slammed shut. The sound, it echoed like a gunshot. She buckled a screaming Leo into his car seat, her hands shaking so badly she dropped her keys twice. As she sat in the driver's seat, soaked to the bone, she looked up at the window of the master bedroom. The lights were warm and golden. She saw Derek's silhouette, and then another silhouette joined him. A woman, slim, long hair. She watched as Derek handed the woman a glass of wine. He hadn't sold the house. There were no new owners coming at 8:00 a.m. He had just cleared the board for someone else. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, a primal scream rising in her throat, but she swallowed it down for Leo's sake. She started the engine, the old car sputtering to life, and backed out of the driveway of the only home she had known for 5 years. She had $12 in her checking account. Her credit cards, she would soon discover, had already been cancelled. Inside 402 Oakwood Drive, the ambiance was one of triumphant celebration. Derek turned away from the window as the taillights of the Honda faded into the darkness. He felt a rush of adrenaline, the same rush he got when closing a hostile takeover. He had done it. He had severed the dead weight. "Is she gone?" Jessica asked, stepping out of the shadows. She was 24, an aspiring interior designer Derek had met at a gallery opening 6 months ago. She was everything. Sarah wasn't uncomplicated, impressed by his wealth and morally flexible. "Gone for good," Derek said, taking a sip of his scotch. "Don't worry about her. She's resilient, like a cockroach." Jessica giggled, walking over to run a hand along the leather sofa. "God, this place is huge. I can't believe you lived here with her. It's so drab." "Change it all." Derek waved his hand expansively. "I'm transferring $50,000 to your account in the morning. Get rid of the drapes, the furniture, everything that smells like diapers and mediocrity. I want this place to look like a palace." "You're the best, baby," she cooed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "But aren't you worried about the legal stuff? You said she has a brother who works in finance." Derek scoffed. "Her brother? Please. The guy manages a majestic portfolio of about $300 at a local credit union in Ohio. He's a nobody. And Sarah. She doesn't have the money to hire a lawyer who could even pronounce my attorney's name." Derek walked to his desk and opened his laptop. He logged into his primary offshore account, hosted by the Bank of Nevis. The screen populated with numbers that would make an average man faint. Balance, 12 on tools, $450,000. "Look at that," he muttered to himself. He had been siphoning money from their joint accounts and his business profits into this hidden shelter for 2 years. He had reported losses to the IRS, losses to Sarah, losses to his partners. But in reality, he was richer than he had ever been. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer, Arthur Caldwell. "Derek." Arthur's voice was raspy. It was late. "Is it done? Ideally executed," Derek bragged, putting the phone on speaker as he poured champagne for Jessica. "She's out. No scene." "Well, a small scene, but she left. I need you to ensure the restraining order is filed tomorrow. Cite emotional instability and threats to my safety. I want sole custody of the house. We can give her visitation for the kid on weekends, maybe if she gets a psychological eval." "You're a cold son of a bitch, Derek." Arthur chuckled. "I'll have the papers at the courthouse by 9:00 a.m. But be careful. You moved a lot of assets very quickly last week. If anyone looks too closely at the sale of the property to your shell company, it might raise flags." "Nobody is looking, Arthur. Sarah is busy trying to figure out how to buy diapers. She's not auditing shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Just keep the paperwork clean." Derek hung up and clinked glasses with Jessica. "To the future," he toasted. "And to upgrading." "To upgrading." Jessica smiled, sipping the expensive vintage. While they drank miles away, Sarah pulled into the parking lot of the Starlight Motel off the interstate. The neon sign flickered, missing the letter G. It was the kind of place where people went when they wanted to disappear, or when the world had disappeared them. She carried the sleeping Leo into the lobby. The clerk, a man with a grease-stained shirt and tired eyes, looked at her soaking wet clothes and the baby. $40 a night, he grunted. Sarah handed him her debit card. She held her breath. "Please, please don't be declined," the machine whirred. "Approved." She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She had enough for tonight. Maybe tomorrow. But after that, she walked into the musty room smelling of stale smoke and lemon cleaner. She laid Leo on the center of the bed and barricaded him with pillows. She sat on the floor, her back against the door, and took out her phone. She had one contact she hadn't called in 10 years, a name she promised Derek she would never speak again, because he claimed the man was a crook and a liar. She scrolled down to the name Uncle Silas. He wasn't her real uncle. He was her late father's business partner from decades ago. Derek had forced Sra to cut ties with him when they got married, claiming Silas had tried to swindle her father's estate. But sitting on the floor of a motel room, Sarah began to wonder if Derek had lied about that too. She typed a text message. Her fingers trembled. "Silas, it's Sarah." Derek took everything. "I'm in a motel with the baby." I think you were right about him." She hit send. Back at the mansion, Derek's phone buzzed with a notification from his bank app. He glanced at it, expecting a confirmation of his dinner bill. Instead, it was a security alert. "Unusual activity detected on account ending in 8892. Please contact customer service." He frowned. That was the joint account he had supposedly drained and closed. He swiped the notification away. "Glitch," he muttered. He turned his attention back to Jessica. He had won. He was sure of it. But the storm outside was getting stronger. The next morning, the sun rose over East Hampton with a deceptive brilliance, making the wet pavement sparkle as if the misery of the previous night had never happened. Derek woke up in a mood of supreme arrogance. He showered, dressed in a fresh suit, and headed downstairs. Jessica was already in the kitchen blending a green smoothie. "I called the contractors," she said brightly. "They're coming at noon to rip out that awful carpet in the library." "Good," Derek said, checking his watch. "I'm heading to the bank. I want to finalize the transfer for the new yacht. I want it docked by the weekend so we can celebrate properly." He climbed into his Porsche Panamera and sped toward the city. His destination was the Sovereign Trust Bank, a private institution for high-net-worth individuals. He had an appointment with the branch manager, Mr. Henderson, to move $2.5 million into a secure trust for the yacht purchase. As he drove, he dialed Arthur again. "Did you file the papers?" Derek asked. "Filed and stamped." Arthur confirmed. "But Derek, I got a weird call this morning from a firm called Blackwood and Finch." Derek frowned, changing lanes aggressively. "Never heard of them. Who are they?" "That's the thing. They're heavy hitters. Corporate litigation forensic accounting. They represent old money. Real old money. They asked for a copy of the pre-ENUP. So send it to them. Sarah probably went to legal aid, and they referred her to some pro bono charity case. Blackwood and Finch don't do pro bono, Derek. Their retainer is more than your car. I'm just saying, keep your eyes open. Derek hung up, annoyed. He hated it when people rained on his parade. Sarah couldn't afford a sandwich, let alone a top-tier law firm. It was probably a bluff. He walked into the bank, greeting the security guard with a nod. He bypassed the tellers and went straight to the glass-walled office of Mr. Henderson. Mr. Sterling. Henderson stood up, though his smile seemed a fraction tighter than usual. Please sit down. Let's make this quick, Henderson. I have a lunch reservation at Le Bernardin. I need to wire the $2.5 million to the boat broker in Miami. Here are the routing details. Derek slid a piece of paper across the desk. Henderson picked up the paper but didn't look at it. He looked at his computer screen, then back at Derek. He clasped his hands together. Actually, Mr. Sterling, we have a bit of a situation regarding the transfer. Derek's eyes narrowed. What situation? I have over $12 million in liquidity. The money is there. The money is visible, yes, Henderson said carefully. But as of 8:30 this morning, a freeze order was placed on your primary holdings. Derek laughed a short, sharp bark. A freeze by who? The IRS. I'm audited every year. I'm clean. Not the IRS, Henderson said. He turned his monitor slightly so Derek could see. It's an internal flag, triggered by a compliance discrepancy involving the original grantor of the assets. The original grantor. I'm the grantor. I made that money. Derek slammed his hand on the desk. Well, sir. Henderson adjusted his glasses. According to the deed of trust for the Oakwood property and the initial capital used to found your venture firm, the funds originated from the Hartford Estate Trust. Derek froze. The blood drained from his face. Hartford. That was Sarah's maiden name. But her father had died broke. That's what Derek had always believed. That's what the records showed. That's impossible, Derek whispered. Sarah's father was a failed inventor. He left her nothing. Apparently. Henderson said, reading from a digital document, the assets were placed in a dormant trust accessible only upon specific conditions. One of those conditions was that the funds were to be managed by the spouse only so long as the marriage remained intact and the beneficiary, Sarah Hartford, resided in the primary residence. Henderson looked up, his eyes cold. We received notification last night that Ms. Hartford was forcibly removed from the residence. That action triggered a default clause. Default clause! Derek's voice rose to a shriek. What does that mean? It means, Mr. Sterling, that the capital reverts to the beneficiary. And since your business accounts were commingled with that original capital,